Hello friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. And that's a very appropriate name for these times that we're living through right now. There's a lot of Pluto in the configurations that we're about to look at. So just remember that it is all in your best interest. You know, sometimes we get a little bit afraid of Pluto. We think it's messing with us. And you know what? It is. It's messing with us. But the thing is, life is not static. Anytime you think that you're just sitting pretty and there's nothing you have to worry about and you're sitting on your lawn with your lemonade, that's a temporary situation, you know, and we don't like to think of it that way. We like to think that we're in some kind of static, free-form mode where we just have everything going well for us. But really, that's not life, is it? I mean, life has its ups and downs, and at any moment, things can change, as we found out last November. And at any moment, we can have a triumph and a breakthrough, and that's a very exciting thing. So it's important to recognize that, you know, the process of living is a process of change. And a process of change involves leaving something behind, you know, making room for the new. And that's what Pluto's about. You know, Pluto is sometimes called the wrecking ball. Basically, you just wanted to remodel one corner of the bedroom and then the whole house gets demolished and restarted. And that depends, the severity of it also depends on your homework. You know, like if you've been kind of attuning to your changes, it can go very smoothly, really. And if you welcome the fact that there may be some change happening and you say, okay, well, that's what's up now, I'm in for it, things can go better for you than if you resist, you know, and you say, no, I'm not ready for that. I don't want to go to bed. I'm going to grab the banisters. I'm being dragged up to bed, grab every banister rail I can get my hands on to keep it from happening. Well, it's futile. And, you know, you might have to do a different thing than you've been doing before. You might have to give something up. But it really isn't so bad when you accept maybe the bigger picture of what your life is about, and when you look at what the overall arc of your development might be. What are you really about? You know, what is going on for you? What is the real thing that's happening here? And, you know, when you get into that, it can be a kind of a thrill to experience change, which is a good thing because we have a lot of it. Let's look at the chart for the new moon. If we go here and here, you should be seeing the chart. And we're looking at a chart with the natural houses, you know, basically starting with Aries, then Taurus, you know, putting the signs around the outside. So the actual rising is Sag. That's on this particular coast, you know, that's for June 23rd, Friday, 7:30 p.m., the timing of this new moon. And the rising will depend on where you're located when the moon and the sun come together. So we're looking at some new moon at the very beginning of Cancer, so very close to the summer solstice. This is basically the summer solstice chart with a few minor variations depending on the movements of the smaller planets, the more faster moving planets, the personal planets is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, it's a very interesting chart. The thing that really draws our attention, I believe, is the fact that Pluto, as we've been speaking about, being near the top of this natural chart and being at 18 degrees of Capricorn, well, Venus comes along in its own sign of Taurus and is 18 degrees of Taurus, and only a few minutes of a degree separate these two planets from being a perfect trine with each other. And then the other perfect trine that we see also by degrees is Eris, the new planet beyond Pluto that I've been writing about, which is a spiritual warrior for soul intention, is sitting at 23 degrees of Aries still, and that's where Saturn has retrograded too. So these are both forming trines, which are very powerful. And the fact that they exist in this new moon means that they're really with us for the next cycle, the next 30 days of the lunation cycle beginning with this Cancer new moon. So it's important to recognize that we do have, speaking of Eris now, that we do have an opportunity to tune more deeply into what is our life intention, what are we really here for, what is it that is our bottom line that we cannot do without, what is it that we will fight for no matter what, because it is the thing that we're really here to do. And so that's what Eris has to tell us, being prominent in this chart. Pluto being prominent in this chart tells us that transformation is alive and well, and Pluto and Saturn have been parallel for quite some time. They're not moving very fast. I think they're getting closer right now, 21.4, 21.9. Yeah, they're just half a degree apart. As Saturn has been retrograding backwards, it's been getting closer to the declination of Pluto as well. So Saturn-Pluto, structural change, we see it all around us. You can certainly say that there's change in the social structure, a lot of change in Europe and in the United States, probably all over. I'm not as familiar with what's going on in China, but I'm sure there's a lot of change happening in China as well. And, it's just the way things are right now. We're seeing structures crumbling. We have, since Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, and we had the financial collapse, and what's going to replace them. So that's the thing, is you have to think about the structure collapsing so that a new structure can come into being, because the old structure would be what would prevent that. The old structure would be the going status quo, and you've got to get away from it. That was true in the early days of this last century, before the World War I, when things were very stultified. There was very little room for creative movement, creative dance. It was all very kind of formalized and structured, and things got shooken up and changed quite a bit at that time, which was permitting the advent of the Roaring Twenties and, eventually of the 60s, when we had the big change indicated by Pluto and Uranus in combination. Now Pluto, that was when they were conjunct in Virgo, and now Pluto and Uranus are still in their square formation right up till 2020. They're going to be off and on pretty close, a few degrees apart from their square. So you have Uranus in Aries, you have Pluto in Capricorn, as we talked about for quite some time. But then the other thing to throw into this mix is that Saturn is part of this picture now because of being, trying to, Uranus for one thing, but also being in connection with Pluto through the parallel that they have. So by throwing Saturn in, you see more conservative empowerment, you see more up-in-your-face polarities, and that's been the case. There's people on both sides of the aisle in the Washington, D.C. situation that are kind of screaming for each other's heads, unfortunately. But, maybe we can get somewhere with, at least it's been motivating people to be activist about what they deeply believe, and a lot of social issues of great importance are going on right now, and trying to figure out the best way to do things. So how does that apply to you? So in your own life, where do you see the divide? Where do you see the conservative feeling of, I can't possibly break out of that, even though I'd like to, even though my job is not working for me, or whatever it might be that's not working? We're afraid to move on to the next thing. Sometimes, people say, oh my God, I got fired. I never thought this would happen, but it happened. And then they look back on it and they say, that was the best day of my life. So, sometimes it takes an outside event to stimulate the change that we're in the midst of, and sometimes we can manage it on our own. Well, this is a very emotional time, because not only do we have the new moon being in Cancer, we have also Mercury in Cancer, so our feelings are being articulated. It's a very, with Cancer, that's the water sign, it refers to the emotions. This particular sector of the chart, the fourth sector of the chart, this is a natural chart with talking about the normal sequence of the zodiacal signs. We have Mars in Cancer, which is very, very interesting. It's debilitated in Cancer, so it's a kind of a weakened Mars. We're not so aggressive about it, but we have deep feelings. And so this is a time of really getting into our emotions. It's augmented by the fact that there's this square between Mars and Jupiter right now. And then what's also greatly augmented is the trine between Mars and Neptune. So that's the other trine in this picture. So there's a lot of trines. It's kind of a quiet time. It's kind of a seriously thoughtful time, a time of introspection. And with Venus and Pluto, it's a time of really change that we can feel, that we can make happen, change that would be reflecting back into our deepest values. What are our deepest values? That's one of the Venus-Taurus qualities, is what are the values that we really espouse, and with Eris there we could say, and what does that mean in terms of our activities? What do we have to do so that we can act on those values and be consistent and be in alignment with our deeper self, our higher self, really? It's coming to a place where we feel comfortable about who we are and the acts that we're performing. I mean, how do you get to that point? How do you get to the change that's necessary to get to that point? So, powerful time, a time when we might just reflect that there's a lot of change in the air, and if we welcome it, we can move forward with our lives and on the curve of the development that we really are here for, what we're about. And if we resist, that's fine. That's a good thing. That's gives us another opportunity. The channeled being Abraham says, if you have a problem and you ignore that problem, don't worry, it'll get worse. And pretty soon you won't ignore it any longer. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in, trying to deal. And there's a lot of joy in it, as well as the urgency of the situation that we have personally. So I think that's what I wanted to say about this new moon. Anybody tuning in with questions at this point? We haven't pre-announced. Yes, we have a question. Alice T says, how does this affect us using the southern hemisphere, going through the winter solstice? Okay, somebody's in the southern hemisphere. Well, I'm really, I don't have too much to say about that, to tell you the truth. The summer solstice, is in Cancer, and it really is still the sign. The sun is in Cancer. In other words, whether you're south or north of the equator. So all the things that I've been saying about feelings are still very true south of the border. I mean, not south of the border, south of the equator. So it really, I think it's the same. I mean, I don't really specialize in looking at southern hemisphere charts and how they differ. Certainly the constellations that you see in the night sky are different because it's night at a different point. But I think that's true. I'm not even sure about that, to tell you the truth. So it's fundamentally the same whether you're south or north hemisphere, because basically the signs are the same, and the signs really are not constellations, are they? The signs are sections of the zodiac, which is the space surrounding the Earth. And the signs are, the constellations of stars that you see are markers for those signs, and the markers were aligned in a certain way 2,000 years ago so that the constellation of Aries the Ram did correspond exactly to the sign of Aries the Ram. And it's very important that there's 12. It's not 12 by some arbitrary count of, there just happened to be 12. It's all very profoundly numerologically connected with everything. You have your 4 elements, and you have your 3 modalities. You can have cardinal, fixed, or mutable, and that creates the 12 signs. And 12 is a very interesting number, of course, being 3 times 4. There's a lot of depth to it that is not simple, and you wouldn't want to try to separate it out and add a 13th constellation by by looking at the way things line up astronomically. The astronomers have a great deal of purpose. I mean, it's wonderful what they do, and of course they tell us the precise timing of these things, and they announce the discovery of new planets. We didn't know that Eris was a planet out there beyond Pluto until very, very recently, until 2006, when the astronomer Mike Brown discovered something in his telescope that was, oh my God, that was moving like a planet, that wasn't a fixed star, and he's able to characterize the size of it and the mass, the density. They have all kinds of ways to detect things. So it's wonderful what they do, but it's a mistake to think that they know more about the mystical side of things than we astrologers do. So as far as the signs, they really do represent the space around the Earth, whether you're in the northern or the southern hemisphere. So we call it the summer solstice up here where we are in the north, and you would call it the winter solstice down there, and certainly it's colder. But I still think the meaning is very, very similar to what we have up here. Namely the sign of Cancer being still associated with water, which is an element, and with feelings. And then you have Mars, which is associated with the fire element, located in this water sign. So Mars is in a different mode than it will be at some point in the future, not too long from now, few weeks, when it crosses into the sign of Leo, which is much more familiar with, But right now we do have the square, don't we, between Mars in Cancer and Jupiter in Libra, and that square energizes Mars. So we'll be seeing over the next few days here, right with the new moon, but a few days beyond, we'll be seeing a more energized presence of this very soft Mars that is feeling oriented. So our feelings are going to be very definitely stirred. It's a good time to look into relationships, as I've been saying, a good time to really get into your own feelings and what are your deepest values. And that's the real meaning of these times. So with that, let's see, I guess I'll transition and wind up here. And just say that we're happy to do this every couple of weeks and provide information for people and try to teach a little bit about how we do astrology, so that it's not just a mysterious saying of the what's happening, without trying to ground it in the actual astrological symbolism, to show that there's a science behind it, or a craft at least, of understanding this symbolism and understanding that we have a magical universe. I mean, somehow the meanings of the planets, as they move around in their orbits, they tell us about ourselves. They tell us about how we are the character we have when we're born, and they tell us what's coming up, the kind of cosmic weather that we might experience. So this is such a valuable thing that astrology brings. And of course, the other thing that we want to say is that the Time Passages software is designed to try to let people explore their own charts. And you can click on things and get meanings out of it. I don't know that I've really demonstrated that very much, and I don't think I'll take the time to demonstrate it right now, but you can put the mouse on any planet and see the interpretation of that planet and that sign and that house position, and see the declinational connections also, and the aspects or the longitudinal connections between the planets, which tell us more about how they interact with each other. So there's a lot to astrology, and there's a lot to learning about it. If you're interested in picking up more about it, then the Time Passages software might be just the thing, since it's a very good introduction to the subject, and it can teach you as you go. You can do charts for yourself and friends and people you know, and celebrities too, and find out more about your own life and the life of, and how astrology brings meaning to looking at everybody's life, and how that really ties all together. It's one of these unending subjects. You can keep studying astrology as long as you want to keep studying. It's just it continually opens like a flower. So that's all we have for you this week, and we'll see you in the next couple of weeks. And have a good time. Have a good beginning of summer.